Ladies and gentlemen, it's that time again where, well, a brand new gacha game is being released and you need the opinions of someone you've never seen or heard about on the internet before to give you some semblance of what any of the good characters are. I guess that's me. So let's go over some of my top picks for the characters that you can gain access to when you start Etheria Restart. The official launch patch notes have been released and some of the characters got buffed or nerfed slightly. Most characters receiving minor tweaks if they are buffed or nerfed, but they do maintain the main role that they were able to do prior. No character's been fully reworked, so this is going to be our list. The first character we're going to be looking at here is going to be Beyontin. Beyontin, my girl. Where are we going to be putting Beyontin? One of the nice little top tier support characters you can think of using in Etheria Restart. Her main gimmick is going to be buffing the damage as well as the longevity of a lot of your characters through the use of her S2 as well as her S3 skill here. Giving attack as well as crit damage buff to all allies for 2 turns is quite exceptional in both PvP as well as PvE. And one of the best things about it is that she does have this underworld flower gimmick. It's sort of her own mechanic where it's going to reduce the amount of damage that she takes. She can gain 2 stacks of this. And on top of that, not only making her harder to be removed off of the field, but while she has an underworld flower on her, if someone's going to be defeated and your party be downed, it's going to automatically revive them and consume one of these stacks, as well as increasing their turn meter by 35% and healing them for 40% of their max HP, which is quite nice. But on top of that, she also has a very powerful S2 here, which is going to reduce some of the cooldowns of the character that you target, and she's also going to CR boost them as well. But you can even use this skill on someone who is currently down and defeated and has 0 HP, as long as she also has an underworld flower stack on her. You can use this on a defeated ally to revive them and allow them to take their turn immediately as well and keep them around permanently. If she doesn't have the stack of underworld flower, it's just going to, well, make them take their turn and then they're just going to face plant right back down again. But it does allow you to utilize that one final skill you need in these certain PvP scenarios, maybe on your main DPS character, bring them back up, have them get that last blow in to help you win the match in some of these different scenarios in both PvE as well as PvP. And then her final skill, her skill 1 here, is going to increase the turn meter of an ally with the lowest turn meter in your party by 25%. It's going to help that person turn cycle just that little bit better for you there. And while Beyontin is exceptionally strong, I'm not going to be putting her in the God tier or even the S tier. I'm going to put her in this, well, A tier category. You want to call it the tier 0.5 category if that's what you want to rate. We'll be putting her right in A, because while she does do some very powerful things, there are some things that are kind of holding her back, some other characters who can strip that very powerful buff off of her, and they kind of sort of, are the gatekeepers of how good Beyontin can be in PvP. But if you're just looking for a very solid support offensive character that gives you some nice longevity, some emergency buttons to hit in PvP and PvP scenarios, she's going to be pretty good for you there as well. Now, another character, speaking of strippers, that I want to be talking about here that we should let us know that is existing is going to be Borgne. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Borgne is a character who I think early on in a lot of the betas didn't get the justice that Borgne was due. Borgne is going to be this sort of brick house of a problem for a lot of players out there in PvP scenarios. Maybe not so much in PvE, but in PvP, he does do a lot of cool stuff. Now, the main thing we need to talk about here is going to be his Nightbane passive. So he's going to increase his max HP equivalent to 500% of his self attack. So all the attack you build on him is going to give him a lot of health. But on top of that, every attack that he does also deals additional damage equal to 30% of his max HP. The downside of this passive is that he cannot land critical hits. So what this means is that instead of building crit chance and crit damage and attack like you would on a typical damage dealer, or HP crit chance and crit damage like you would on an HP scaling damage dealer, you're going to be building him for health as well as attack. The more attack you have on him, the more health you're going to have. The more health you have, the more additional damage you're going to do. And he also still does do damage based off of his attack as well. So you're going to want both of these stats on your Borgne. His S3 is going to do pretty significant changes in PvP. Like we just talked about, strips are very powerful here. And Borgne is going to be able to do a pretty nice multiplier, 440% if there's 4 or more enemies alive. But He's also going to do this very important thing with a 100% base chance to dispel one buff from the target. You can also put effect rate on your Borgne as well if you want to easily combat anyone who's got some effect resistance built on themselves in PvP. Dispel some very important buffs, like, I don't know, maybe Beyontin's buff. But on top of that, for every one enemy that is defeated in a PvP scenario or in a PvE scenario, he's going to do additional damage as well. And this attack also ignores target's passive skills, which will be something that we could see gain even more value over time in Etheria Restart. If you've played a game like Epic 7, or, you know, you've kind of seen how some of these PvP sort of gacha games sort of, well, start relying on having really strong damage mitigation, damage limit passives on a lot of characters. Not that that exists right now, but this could be something that gets even better over time. And then his S1 really plays into this sort of immovable, just sort of damage dealer setup, because, well, he's going to do damage equivalent to a 300% multiplier and recover 60% of his health, equivalent to 60% of that damage dealt. So pretty nice if you hit someone for 1,000 damage, you hit for 600 healing to yourself as well. So you can stack HP, you can stack attack, maybe a little bit of speed on him. You want to go crazy and put the counter set on him and just have him be this sort of immovable monstrosity in your setup, which makes Borgne a pretty decent guy, all things concerned. And with that being said, Borgne, in my opinion, is pretty significant. Now, I don't think I'm going to be putting him quite in the, I kind of want to put him up in the S tier category, actually, because he's one of the only few bruiser characters that I can really get behind and enjoy. He's going to be this giant stat stick for your opponents to get through. He's going to hit pretty hard. He's got the ability to remove buffs, and he can kind of just stand the test of time. And I think he's going to turn out to be one of the best characters in some situations to have in your party, although not quite god tier there. Now, the next character we need to talk about is going to be Helkid. Now, Helkid's one of the characters that kind of flew under a lot of players' radars for a long time. But man, people are starting to catch on just how good this guy is. He's one of the top banned characters in some situations. So yeah, he's quite good. Now, this is all going to rely on him doing a couple of very important things. Two things: he's going to crowd control different opponents, as well as protect your team from crowd control and other debuffs as well. So the main gimmick on this character is going to be his S3 Shroud Barrier, which is going to give you and your entire party a barrier based off of Helkid's attack. But while this barrier exists, you're also immune to all debuffs while that barrier is on your team. This can be applied to everyone as well. But on top of that, not only can you gain this barrier as well as doing damage with the S3 here, you also have the S2 that also applies the barrier to Helkid himself, as long as he currently has a Shroud Barrier on. It makes it even stronger for himself, but it also is going to put a 2-turn attack down on your enemies as well. So attack down means they're doing less damage, which means that your barrier is even harder to remove. So if your opponents are running some sort of crowd control team composition, they don't have a lot of characters who can just straight up strip the barrier off of you in some ways through giant damage, etc. They're not going to be able to land defense break. They're not going to be able to land speed down. They're not going to be able to do anything that they want to do to your party, which is incredibly powerful. But on top of that, not only are we very protective doing damage with these two skills, Helkid's S1 is also extremely problematic for your opponent, because not only is he an attack skiller that's giving you barriers based off of his attack, so he's doing damage, he also has a stun on his S1. So it's a 50% base chance to stun, but if you have a Shroud Barrier, it goes up to 100% base chance to stun as well, meaning you're able to just constantly take people out of the fight. They're not able to do as much damage to you. He gives attack down, and then you can start sniping whatever you think is problematic in a PvE or PvP scenario, whether it's locking down their DPS, locking down their support character, and stunning them while your barrier's on and keeping everyone in your party healthy. So Helkid is actually kind of quite insane, and he is going to be the first character that we're going to be putting on God tier in this list. He's just that good. You can't go wrong with him. He's also one of the characters you can pick up as a selector from the targeted summon when you first start this game as well. He's just an exceptionally phenomenal character to have access to when you're looking up, different party compositions for Etheria restart. And well, it's not going to be like that for forever, all right? Not everyone's going to be able to fly under the radar like Helkid did. Now, speaking of another character who is exceptionally powerful, this is going to be the first light dark character we talk about. This is going to be Dokidoki. Now, Dokidoki, very strong support character here. She's got one little downside that we'll talk about at the end, but she does so many things with just 2 skills. That is what makes her incredibly powerful. So Dokidoki's S3 here is going to increase turn meter for a character in your party by 12%, and then it's going to do it 8 more times. Each time that she does the 12% turn meter increase, she's going to target whoever is currently lowest on the turn meter, meaning that she can push multiple people up to 100% in some situations, or she can take someone who's way down, push them consecutively up until they're no longer the lowest, and then you start pushing people up over each other. So you get 8 12% pushes, and each time you do that, you're going to add a stack of this buff called Data Stream to them, and Data Stream is going to increase the damage that character does by 2.5%, and also give them a permanent 2.5 speed up to 12 stacks, meaning that you can add a quite exceptional amount of speed as well as damage percent bonus. 10 stacks of this is 25% damage bonus, as well as 25 speed, and it goes up to 12. But on top of that, she's also going to add 5 stacks of this buff called Backup to herself as well. And Backup does what is as follows. If someone in your party is going to take their turn, but they have debuffs on them, Dokidoki's going to remove 1 stack of Backup off of herself and cleanse 3 debuffs off of that character. So just in this skill alone, you're pushing up multiple people in your party, way up into the turn meter, giving them stacking permanent damage bonus, stacking permanent speed, and also preventing them from being crowd controlled by up to just 15 debuffs spread across your party. She's the ultimate spread of CR pushing and giving buffs to people and keeping them safe from debuffs as well, all in one skill. We also have the S2, which is the full overwrite here, and this is, well, quite nice as well. This is going to be very similar to the S3, but instead of looking at different team members and CR pushing them up 12% each 8 times, this is going to be 5 casts of a skill that targets an ally who has skills that are currently on cooldown. She's going to look at someone, be like, do you have the highest cooldown remaining on your skill yet? And she's going to target them and reduce their cooldowns by 1. And then she's going to go to see who is also now currently with the highest cooldown remaining on their skill. So you can reset skill cooldowns 5 times, targeting the highest remaining across your party. Each of these times she's looking for someone there, and this is also going to give them stacks of data stream. So your S3 can push up and apply data stream and keep everyone safe with backup, and then the S2 can help you use your skills faster across your entire party and also give them stacking speed as well as damage buffs. The one downside for Dokidoki that we want to talk about here is, well, her S1 isn't the craziest thing. It's just going to do a small amount of damage. You're not building her for damage anyway. In a lot of circumstances, you're building it for speed and tankiness and survivability, so she can use her S2 and her S3. But once you're done with those 2 skills, all she really does is do S1, do a little bit of damage, and then apply 1 stack of backup to herself as well. So she kind of gets a preemptive cleanse ready to rock and roll. I don't want to say that this is a bad skill. It's not. It's very strong, but compared to her S2 and her S3, it's the worst skill that she has. But with that being said, Dokidoki is incredibly powerful, and, well, if I didn't put her where she needs to be, then you'd all be very, very, very upset with me. Did I just rhyme that, by the way? Meaning that Dokidoki, we're not in B, we're not in A, we're in God tier, all right? She is a God tier character. Dokidoki is way up here with our friendly neighborhood Helkid. I can't really tell you how strong she is. You'd have to kind of see her in action in both PvE as well as PvP scenarios. Debuffs are everywhere. She deals with that. CR pushing's powerful, reducing the cooldown on your skills in some of these not long PvP battles, but like mid-length PvP battles. Just being able to get to your strongest skills one more time before your opponent does is that powerful. And she's going to be one of the God tier overall characters that you can gain access to inside of Etheria Restart. Heinrich is a character that y'all are gonna love, okay? We've talked about how many powerful buffs there are in this game, preventing debuffs. Heinrich is amazing. Now he's got 127 speed. We haven't talked about speed that much, which is around what we've talked about for some of the other characters. 127 isn't the highest that you'll get to. With combined stats, I think we'll see like a 132, 133. So he's up there though. He's one of the fastest characters. And what he does do, well, is very important. We've talked about how strong buffs are in this game so far. His skill 3, we're doing damage and we put block on. Okay, now block is very important because when you have block on, you cannot gain buffs. Meaning that in PvP scenarios or in PvE scenarios, when you're fighting enemies who want to buff themselves, well, unless they cleanse the block before they try to buff with anything, they just don't work. They can't. Now, on top of putting block on everyone here with a 65% base chance, meaning that you're going to have to put some effect rate on him to get this block chance up enough to just put it on most times, you're also going to be doing damage, and every 1 stacks of last word on the target, which we'll get to in a second, will increase your crit damage of the skill by 30%. Now, what is last word? Now, last word is coming from his S1. So not only can you block things with your S3, but if you look at the S1 here, you also have the ability to inflict block there on the S1. But on top of that, not only does the S1 put block on for these heavy buff teams, he also has a chance built in on his S1 to dispel a buff from that target as well. And then if the target has no dispellable buffs, he's got an 80% chance to inflict this last word mechanic on them, meaning that the last word is going to increase the crit damage taken and the chance of being crit by 7% each, which is just something that the buff does up to 4 stacks at a time. So Heinrich is going to be a very powerful character. He's going to be an anti-buff character, which is just quite incredible. And then if you don't run Heinrich in a PvP or PvE scenario where the enemies have a bunch of buffs, he's just going to make your team crit more and do more crit damage on top of that. So it's not like there's a lose-lose or a lose-win scenario where sometimes he's insane and sometimes he's just bad. He just does what he wants to do 100% of the time. And that's not even talking about his S2 skill, which is probably the weakest of his skills. Not saying it's bad, but the block and the last word is very, very strong. But what this one does here as well is it does do damage, and then it'll do damage to a random enemy, and then it'll do damage to all enemies. So you'll target somebody, and then it'll randomly target somebody else, and then it'll attack again and do damage to everybody. If the target has no buffs that can be dispelled, there's going to be a 65% chance to put wounds on them, which means that they cannot receive healing. So Heinrich is just a nightmare scenario in PvP situations. He also does do significantly great DPS for himself as well as other members in your party, because in a lot of PvE situations there aren't going to be buffs, so you get a lot of this last word stacks up there for crit damage and crit rate, which is huge. Like 4 stacks of this, that's going to be that's 28% crit rate just for him being in your party, on top of 28% crit damage, and for everyone with this last word debuff. And then you take him into some PvP scenarios and he works very well there, buff blocking, stripping buffs, doing damage, putting unhealable on. And this is someone that I didn't have in like my god tier category before when we were talking about characters in Etheria Restart, but because of how the meta is sort of being shaped around having buffs, being strong, having speed, turn cycling, he's just very good at what he does in a lot of situations. He's not number 1 at everything. I kind of want to put him up in the god tier, but I kind of want to leave him down in S tier because, well, this isn't strictly a PvP scenario, and this is trying to predict the meta. So I don't want to try to just be like, oh, if this character's got, if there's buffs galore everywhere when the game launches, he's god tier, and if there's not as many, he's still good in PvP, so he's only S tier. But counting about just how good he is in PvE as well for your party, I'm gonna have to put him up in the god tier category as well, with the way that he sort of helps shape your team and sort of counters this like sort of buff heavy meta in some situations in PvP. Because at the moment it's either go first and buff your team up so they can't touch you, or go first and eviscerate your team in a lot of situations. He is good in both of those situations. So I'm gonna have to leave it up to S tier for our boy there. Now I want to talk about an SSR character next, and this character we're all gonna get for free, and this is gonna be Gray. Gray is gonna be a very nice character to have access to, especially when the game first releases, This is because he does a lot of very powerful things right out the gate. Now, we just talked about 127 not being the fastest speed. Well, this guy's going to be 122, so he's not as fast as other people. You can clearly gear gap people in this game if you have just better substat rolls with a character like Gray compared to someone else that you might see in Arena. But what he does do here, very simple but very powerful. The S2 here is going to give everyone a crit rate buff, which increases your crit rate by 30%, meaning that early on in Etheria restart, before you get access to some super well-rolled gear, you're not going to have 100% crit rate. He can increase your damage by a phenomenal amount across every character in your party due to this crit rate buff. But it's better than just that because he'll also immediately gain 1 extra turn when you use Thunderous Roar, and you use this extra turn to use his skill 3, which does do some pretty significant damage, 220% mod to all enemies, and then on a critical hit, deals an additional 120%, bringing that up to like a 340% multiplier, but most importantly, inflicts a 2-turn defense break, AoE, meaning that he's going to give everyone your party crit rate, go again, and then give the entire enemy party defense down. And if you pay attention to this, it's not a 100% chance or a 50% chance to land the defense break. It just does it, which is pretty nice. The S1 here, also if you get to it, he does damage, and then on a crit hit, he increases his turn meter by 25% as well. This character just kind of does everything you want him to do right away. He is the go-to sort of general SR 4-star on your account. And with that being said, is he going to be the greatest character across everything in Etheria Restart? No, but I do think that he is not going to shape the meta early on. He will eventually sort of like, I don't want to say fall off, but once we get into being able to grind gear, get those very well-rolled substat pieces, you start going up the ladder. You're not going to be able to gear gap everyone, take turn 1 with Gray, right? Compared to someone else that you might be fighting in Arena on the ladder, meaning that he will fall off a little bit in PvP due to his lower base speed, especially compared to some characters that have like 130, 129. It might not seem like a lot, but if you've played Summoner's War, especially Epic 7, you know just how big like a 6 to 10 base speed gap is when it comes to going first in a game like Restart, especially when Restart speed set is like 35% instead of like 20 or 25% like some other gacha games. So your base speed really matters here. That being said, he's still really strong, and I'm going to shove him right in that A tier because he just kind of encapsulates everything that you want to have access to when you start up Etheria Restart. And speaking of starting Etheria Restart, we're going to get a free SSR. You've probably already seen her, Lian. She's going to be an excellent character. Unlike Gray, who we just went over, who's a free SR DPS, Lian doesn't do crit damage buff, crit rate buff. She doesn't do any buffs to your team at all. She's just a super selfish character. But what she does do is a ton of damage, both single target as well as AoE. She's going to have slightly better stats because she is an SSR. But her S3 here is going to be doing big AoE damage and has a high base chance of 80% to steal 30% turn meter, meaning that if you're able to do damage with this skill, you can steal turn meter away from your opponents and take it and put it on your Lian, meaning that, yeah, if you proc this with a little bit of effectiveness in a PvE scenario, right, you hit 3 things, you can steal 30% from each of them, gain 90% on yourself, and almost take an extra turn right away after your big damage S3. This also works in PvP scenarios, which is 4v4. You can just immediately take an extra turn if you get this to go off on every single enemy, which also goes really well with her S2. Her S2 does several hits back to back to back, 4 hits in total, and they're all going to be random. But every time these do damage for every buff Lian has, an additional Phoenix is summoned up to 3. So you can summon 7 Phoenixes. Very powerful. Some of these supports that we talked about, like Helkid giving barriers, or, you know, Dokidoki giving data stream buffs, or more importantly, like Beyontin giving attack buff and crit damage buff. In the beta, I ran like a Gray Beyontin Lian team for a lot of stuff, just going through the story, and I had crit chance buff, attack buff, crit damage buff, Now at S3 with Lian, most things would die. Then if they didn't die, whatever was left, like the boss, I'd cycle back and I'd have a bunch of buffs. Release this S2, hit 7 times, and they can hit the same target. When they do hit the same target, the damage is reduced up to 3 times, but you're still firing off 7 of these things, which is just phenomenal damage. And if there's multiple things left over, you can hit them all, and it's sort of like a second fake AoE, right? There's 2 things left over. It's a very powerful skill for you to have access to. And then her S1, also very nice, multi-hit attack, and she does recover some HP off of this. And also for every type of buff she has, the damage of this is going to go up by 6%, up to 5 stacks, so 30% damage increase on the S1. So Lian just does a ton of bonus damage. She just is good. She just does everything you would want a character to do. And I'm going to put her up with Gray, because she is a fantastic character. She's not going to shape the meta in PvP. She's not going to shape the meta in PvE for forever. She's just an incredibly, exceptionally powerful unit to have access to, and she can't be any lower than A for that reason. She's just too good of a character. But moving away from some DPSs that we get, we need to talk about another sleeper that sort of shook up PvP. So we have the Kraken, the boy. All right, an SR character, so a lot easier to gain access to in Etheria restart. Not exceptional speed. He is very tanky though, which is great. A lot of base health here for an SR, 18,000 here. But what does this man do? So there's some characters in a lot of gacha games, they just want to crowd control you. They just want to be, you can't move, you can't take your turn. That is really what he does here. Now his S3, the financial tsunami, which sounds like it started for everyone in, I don't know, 2020, 2021 here, transforms into the North Sea Behemoth, okay, and delivers a devastating blow. All right, does some damage, but it has a 75% chance to knock them back on their turn meter by 35%, and a 60% base chance to apply freeze. Now, if you knock them back so their turn meter hits 0, the freeze probability increases to 100%, but if you're stacking this guy for effect rate like you should, it doesn't really matter if you knock them all the way back to 0%. You'll be able to put freeze on them regardless. And freeze just means they can't take their action or gain turn meter. Okay, they can't take action or gain turn meter, which is crazy. The S2 here also doubles down on this. So you're gonna be able to do S2, and a S2 gives you a 70% chance to put deep frozen on someone. Now deep freeze, they can't take action or passively gain turn meter. And if their HP goes below 50% at the start of their turn, it will last an additional 1 turn. And this extension can only be triggered 1 more time. So Kraken basically is the, I'm gonna take this guy out of the game for a while, I'm gonna take this guy out of the game for a while. You better have some cleanses or you're done. If your opponent in PvP scenarios isn't set up for their dedicated cleanser, their dedicated support, to have a way to cleanse themselves out of the freeze so they can cleanse other people, you hit that cleanser, they're shut down. You hit someone else with deep freeze, and they're just kind of shut down for a while, and you can kind of walk away with the game from there. He also does have a defense break on the S1 as well. So Kraken's a phenomenally strong character. Now, I don't think he shapes the meta. I just think the meta will exist in a way where he is good. It's going to be this combat of, do I have cleanses? Do I have, right, someone like Helkid on my team so I can't be deep frozen? Who's going to win out in this argument? It's going to be this eternal battle, right? It's going to be the yin and the yang out there, which means that Kraken is going to be a fantastic character. I don't think he's going to shape the world, but he's definitely someone that you should bring out in your back pocket. So I'm not going to put him up in the God tier category, but I will put him up in like the S tier category of characters, I do believe, because I could see myself valuing someone like Kraken. It comes down to like a playstyle thing, right? Like Gray Kraken, Lian, they're all like the same speed, but like, you know, you can end the battle and cleave with Lian, or you can just sort of like take it a little bit slower, get your Kraken to take a turn, shut some people down that way as well. If you don't go turn 1, you don't have to worry about him dying right away. That's why I'll put him in S tier, because he's so tanky that if you don't go right away, you haven't built bulky enough, maybe your opponent's grade does go right away, Kraken doesn't die, he starts shutting people down. I gotta think about this one. Is Kraken S tier, or do I value him? You know, no, I'm gonna put him in the same tier as this. He doesn't shape the meta. He's not like oppressive, crazy. He's an SR. He does do really good things. I could be wrong on this one, but I'm gonna leave him right there because I think there are ways to balance how good he is. There are enough supports. There are enough cleansers that I think that this is kind of where he's gonna sit. I could be wrong though, but put it down below now because we're gonna be talking about some other characters like Freya. Now Freya's gonna be the first targeted summon that you can go for, the first time limited character. And Freya, as you can see, is gonna be one of the fast characters. 131 combined stats here, 116 plus 15. Still very tanky. Not as tanky as Kraken is actually, but very tanky character. Effect accuracy, effect resistance. She's gonna be a god tier support character. Okay, well let's talk about why. Now I don't know if I'm gonna put her in the god tier category, but let's talk about this right here. Now she has this main gimmick of Dreamweave and Nightmare. You see her everywhere. Dreamweave, Nightmare, Dreamweave, Nightmare, Dreamweave, Nightmare. She can be an offensive support or a defensive support for you, which is very helpful because of her high base speed. You can get into a battle in PvP or PvE and be like, do I need to make it so my team doesn't die? Or do I need to make it so my team destroys everybody? So the S3 here is gonna be the I'm gonna destroy everybody skill. So you're gonna give a 2-turn attack buff to all your allies, very nice. And then it's gonna do 4 hits of a small multiplier to all enemies, but each hit isn't important for the damage, it's important for this nightmare debuff that it will put on them. You put her some effect rate on her, increase this to 100% over 100% so you can fight through some effect res, and put Nightmare on people. Now what does Nightmare do? Nightmare is gonna make them take 15% more damage, and then when attacked, it's also going to heal the attacker as well. So this is where some of her sustain comes from, some life leech or life steal, if you will. So very strong offensive cooldown with a little bit of defensive utility attached to it, because you're getting an attack buff plus the damage increase from the Nightmare debuff. However, if you want to go a sort of supportive route here, you can also do the S2 first, which is going to be Dreambinder. Now, Dreambinder is going to give a defense buff to all your allies for 2 turns, and also give them the Dreamweave buff, and then also has an 80% chance to apply an additional stack of Dreamweave. So defense buff, pretty self-explanatory, 60% defense increase. But what does Dreamweave do? Now, Dreamweave can block debuffs. You're gonna get 2 to 3 stacks of this Dreamweave buff on your entire party when you use this. And well, basically, if you're inflicted with a debuff while you have Dreamweave on, instead of getting that debuff, it's just gonna take a stack of Dreamweave off instead. So this is why we were talking about, like, should Kraken be S tier? Should Kraken be whatever? How important is buff stealing, debuff, all this other stuff? You have faster characters like Freya here who can just be like, oh, I see you loaded in PvP with a team of all debuffers. Well, I'm just gonna Dreamweave my whole party. You have like 1 or 2 debuffers, you don't have any dispellers, and good luck. I'm just gonna block all your debuffs before you can even do anything. She just shuts that whole gimmick down. And then her S1, almost done. Her S1 is a little mix of both. So she's gonna do an S1, she's gonna do damage to an enemy, she's gonna have a chance to apply Dreamweave to an ally, and also put Nightmare on an enemy. But then she's got one final skill, the S1, which, well, unlike a lot of other S1s we've talked about, is actually incredibly powerful because it has a passive effect. It has a passive on it. All right, so the first part of it is she's just gonna do 2 hits of damage, whatever. But you can do Dreamweave randomly when you do the S1 to someone in your party for 2 turns. You can also do Nightmare on an enemy randomly for 2 turns as well. But the biggest part of this S1 is anytime someone in your party gets a buff, you will CR push that person up. This counts for the Dreamweave stacks you put on, the defense buffs you stack on, the attack buffs you stack on. So she can also help CR push your team up with her S2 or your S3 as well. And remember, this is 132 combined, 131 combined speed stat character. But on top of that, every time an enemy gets a debuff, it CR pushes them, or turn meter pushes them backwards, which is quite insane. And then Freya gains double the Dream Inducer effects from her own buffs and debuffs as well. Meaning that at max level, 1 buff from Freya is like an 8% CR push when you put something like that on someone. So 131, she's got an answer to buff. She's got an answer to being aggressive. She's got an answer to wanting to be aggressive. She kind of just is everything. And I want to definitely out myself here. Originally, I wasn't very excited for Freya, but I think she is going to be one of the god tier characters when it comes to this meta early on, especially because she has sort of an answer for everything. If you want to be aggressive, she can help you do that. If you want to be defensive, she can help you do that because she's got the high base speed, she's got the turn meter pushes, she's got all this great stuff. She's got an answer to the heavy debuff meta. And now you can see why strippers are so prevalent, or block is so prevalent from someone like Bjorn over here. And that's gonna bring us to Lily. Now Lily is gonna be one of the other Dark Light characters that we'll talk about in this guide. And you can see Lily, just like Freya, 132 speed. And Lily, well, does some very unique things. Now, the first thing we want to talk about here is her S2 in Shadow Trick. Now, this is going to apply a special buff called Twin Trick to one ally in your party. You can only have a Twin Trick on one ally in your party ever, period, from Lily. But on top of that, it's also going to do a 2-turn AoE speed buff, meaning that she's going to help you go really fast. All right, now what does Twin Trick do? So after every action Lily does, the person who has the Twin Trick buff is going to increase their turn meter by 30%. Meaning that your 132 speed character, all things considering, can almost make someone else guaranteed to go second in a lot of PvP scenarios and PvE as well. And just giving someone 30% guaranteed push over and over and over is exceptionally powerful. And remember, you're also going to give everyone in your party, including the person you gave Twin Trick to, a speed buff, meaning that she's going to help you cycle like crazy. She is going to be insane. She's going to be the only character that can consistently help you cycle over and over and over, at least with the speed that she does. Now, the other part of the S2 is that if you do use Twin Trick and the person you're Twin Tricking already has Twin Trick, meaning this is the second time you've used her S2, it'll give crit damage buff instead of a speed buff to help you finish that fight, right? You've Twin Tricked, you've done all your stuff, the cooldowns come back off 3 turns later. You're probably in a scenario where you're like, I can probably finish this fight now. You Twin Trick again, crit damage buff to everybody, go. And remember, you're still having someone with Twin Trick on, so that person's getting a 30% CR boost. But the other cool thing that she does with the Twin Trick buff, not only is it busted in its own right, giving someone 30% Twin Trick turn meter push, her S1 has a 50% base chance to boost her own and the lowest ally's turn meter by 20%, meaning even more pushing. But the ally with Twin Trick will have a 100% chance to assist in the battle, meaning they're going to just come in and use their S1. So you can put this on someone like Helkid or our boy Bjorn out there, right? Oh, I Twin Tricked my Helkid. He got pushed up. He gave everyone Helkid barrier. Oh, we can't be debuffed. Uh-oh. And then every time Lily's taking a turn after that, well, Helkid S1, stun. Then he takes his turn for real. Stun, stun, stun. Or stripping buffs, stripping buffs, stripping buffs, putting wound, putting bind, putting unbuffable, putting all this other stuff on. Very, very strong skill. Then we also have S3, which is just going to extend all skill cooldowns on your enemies by 1 turn and then reset all of the cooldowns on whoever has Twin Trick. So if you talk about tempo, Lily does that, both PvE as well as PvP. There are characters with very powerful skill 1s in this game that you can utilize basically twice a turn cycle with Lily. Over and over again, she's going to get speed buff on herself. She already has incredibly high base speed and just basically acting like a pseudo second copy of your strongest S1 character and letting that person take extra turns, reduce all their skill cooldowns. She's kind of like a little bit of a mimic of a character who can also enable, because she's so fast in PvP scenarios, whoever it is you need to go first, right? If you want to go Lily into Gray, right? You rerolled into that. And you're like, okay, well, my Lily's really fast. My Gray's not. I'll climb the ladder, use Lily, 30% CR push my Gray, crit chance buff everyone, defense break everybody. My entire team also has speed buff now. Goodbye, right? So she does and enables some crazy broken stuff in this game, and there's no way that she belongs anywhere other than S tier. She is God tier. She is a God tier gamer, this girl. She is a fantastic character. Absolutely fantastic. And if we want to talk about some other characters that can sort of fill in for Dokidoki, Freya, and Lily at the same time, there's going to be an SR, Chiaki the Echo. She's not going to be nearly as good, and the main thing holding this character down is going to be her a lot slower base speed of 121. But what she does do here, she does have some turn meter increases. So her S3 is going to be able to increase all allies' turn meter by 20%. as well as gain attack buff for 2 turns. And if they already have an attack buff, or if you use her S2 and they give attack buff from this, you're going to get this special buff every once in a while called Ave Maria. I don't know. Ave Maria, right? Which is going to make you immune to turn meter reductions from someone like Freya with the turn meter pushback, as well as turn meter stealing effects. And then whoever has this buff when they end their turn, they're going to get a 5% turn meter increase. At the end of the day, what does this mean for us when we're rating this character? She's going to be a good character. She's not going to be God tier. She's not going to be S tier. She's going to be up here with the Beyontin, right? She's going to help you facilitate some turn meter pushing, just like with Gray, where like you're climbing the ladder in PvP or you want to use her in PvE. She's going to help facilitate this cycling game plan. Maybe you want to gear gap some people. Just make sure you go first with your God roll gear early on in your entire party, because you hit S3 and it pushes your whole party up 20% turn meter. Your whole party goes before them, and you can just sort of easily get through a lot of the lower levels of the arena until you start meeting people who have faster base speed characters or gear that's equivalent to yours as well. And then on top of this, we have another very prominent character, someone that we'll get for free, so I wanted to make sure we touch on this. And this was the character that made me sort of rate Freya a little lower initially than I probably should have. And this is going to be a Lingluo. Now, Lingluo is going to be a free character you'll get. I think it's a 7-day sort of play the game thing. Do a mission every day. You'll get this character for free. That's what it was in the beta. 128 combined stat speed, so a little bit lower than Freya, but not by a lot. 3, it's fine. Effect res, all this other cool stuff. But what does she do here? She allows you to have 1 turn immunity on all your allies with her S3. It's not the only thing that she does, but it's pretty cool. So her S3 gives everyone 1 turn immunity and then heals all allies 2 times for 14% of their max health. For each buff the target has, the healing effect increases by 20%. So why is this so strong? Well, she's a very fast character. She's a lot faster than some of the other characters, right? Like Kraken, right? 122 combined stat speed is 128. 6 doesn't sound like a lot, but 6 is quite a few substat rolls, especially when you're both wearing speed set. If you're like 12, 13 speed faster, you need to have gear that is faster than that, if that's your strategy, right? It's like I have 4 or 5 substat rolls more than you in speed gear. If you want to gear get me, you need 7 pieces of gear equipped basically compared to my 6, right? But what this does do is it blocks all these debuffers right out the gate in PvP. Blocks all these bosses that want to put debuffs on you as well. And on top of that, it's a heal. Very, very strong. It's a 4-turn cooldown, but that's just one of her skills. But it's something that really carries her, especially in PvP in a lot of situations. She's one of those characters that makes other characters we talked about previously that can strip buffs and debuffs that much better. Now her skill 2 here, very powerful. It's an AoE heal. It's a 3-turn cooldown. She heals all allies for 16% of their max health, and then extends all of your buff by 1 turn, and then target allies receive an additional 20% of their max health. So you target someone, it heals that person more, then it heals everyone else, and then it extends all of your buffs as well. So if you can somehow, I don't think you'll be able to do it, but technically, if you use her S3, and then you get her to take a turn again before one of your other characters, before that 1 turn immunity falls off, you can use the S2 and extend that immunity again, so you can get like 2 turns of immunity. Or you can just extend your attack buffs and your crit chance buffs and your crit damage buffs from your other characters in PvE situations, which is very nice. Her S1 here does do a little bit of damage. It's an HP scaling. We're a support. We're not doing damage here, but it's got a damage mod. But it also heals 2 allies with the lowest health for 15% of their max health. And then she has a passive sort of situated to this as well. Before every time she heals, she has a 65% chance to purify 1 debuff from the target. If that target has no debuffs, she puts the special buff called Whale Prayer on them, which is just an HP regen, right? So if you have a debuff on you, she'll take it off. If you don't have a debuff on you, you're gonna get like an HP regen effect. So she's a very basic character, but because she's a lot faster than a lot of the other debuffers that you'll be seeing, right, on the ladder and arena, etc., if you're into that, at the start of the game, and she applies that 1-turn immunity, she's going to be incredibly powerful for you for those reasons, meaning that she is going to be up here in the S tier. She's just going to be that good. If you load in and they don't have the ability to debuff you right away, then, and she goes first and they can't outspeed you, she's got the 1 turn immunity. The other thing that we want to tackle here, why is she so good even though she only gives 1 turn, she's not the fastest? Well, there's an immunity setup that you can run on your characters too. So even in some situations where you run into the PvP, they have debuffers and they do gear gap you and they are faster than you. If they don't have a stripper to strip your immunity off, because there's a set that loads you into the fight with immunity, they can go first. They can't do anything because you're on immunity for some of your characters. They can't do a whole lot to you. And then you go again with your Lingluo and put immunity back on. So you get 2 turns of blocking them out of everything they want to do if they don't have a way to get rid of that immunity buff. The other thing that you can do with her is if you do load in and you do outspeed and your entire team is on an immunity set, instead of using her S3 and give her everyone 1 turn immunity, you use her S2, extend the durations of the buffs from the immunity set, and you still have your S3 to put immunity back on once it wears off. So she's a very powerful character for those situations. Someone you're going to get incredibly for free. You just got to play the game for 7 days, and you're going to get a lot of use out of Lingluo. Very, very much so. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, in another character that is going to be one of the better debuffers that you can roll up with, and you can also choose to select her from the targeted summon banner at the start, is going to be Lilith. Now, Lilith's going to have 126 combined speed, which is, you know, not super slow, but a little bit faster than like the 120s, etc. She also is going to be an HP scaler, and she does have a significantly high amount of base health, almost 20,000 here, meaning that in a lot of situations, she's going to be very hard to just take out of the fight right away in PvP and PvE setups. But what she does do, she's got some significantly strong debuffs. All right, now she does have this debuff called Graceful Mischief. It's like the bomb debuff in Epic 7 or in Summoner's Warp. That's what this is going to be here. She has an S3 that does damage based off of her max HP, and then has a 100% base chance to inflict Graceful Mischief, meaning that if you are up against someone who stacks some effect resistance, well, you can put some effectiveness on yourself as well, and just make sure that you're always landing this Graceful Mischief debuff. Now, Graceful Mischief explodes when removed, dealing damage equivalent to 30% of Lilith's max HP, and then it also has a 100% chance to inflict stun as well, which means that obviously they can't take their next turn. When they get to their turn, they just don't do anything and they skip it. Now, this S3 also will grant her an extra turn, and the main thing is this extra turn. So you're going to put Graceful Mischief bombs on everybody, take an extra turn, and you're going to do damage equivalent to 20% of Lilith's max HP to all enemies. And then you're also going to put speed down on everybody, which is very, very important. So if you load up into someone who doesn't have the ability to take away debuffs, they don't have the ability to do anything we just talked about. They don't have Helkid, they don't have Freya, they don't have Lingluo, they didn't watch this video, they didn't get 55 minutes into here. Then you're going to be able to give speed down, and also the main person you target will have the bomb detonated and have their CR meter pushed all the way to 0%. Basically taking them out of the fight, which is kind of crazy. Her S1 as well is going to be able to do 20% of her max HP to a single target, and then it's got a random amount of chance to just give her an extra turn, which is going to help you cooldown cycle through your abilities. So is she going to be like the best character in the world? No, she's not, but she is going to be a pretty powerful character, and she's going to be one of the better debuffers that we can put up in here. I don't think she's going to be as good as our boy Eye Patch Man up here when it comes to debuffers, but she's gonna have some pretty nice debuffs to throw up. And I would love to talk about every character and make this a 5-hour long video, but let's go over some of the other ones here too. Now, Tiamat, we already know, is an incredibly strong character. She's gonna be very crucial to like a tank down sort of team. Put her on counter set, put her on the new set that helps you CR push every time she's attacked. Does do a lot of damage, scales very well, especially in PvE as well as PvP. She's gonna help you just go a million miles an hour if you get her early on. She is incredibly powerful, has sustain, has barriers, has healing for your party, has damage absorption like an Aureus type effect, one of the only ways, maybe the only one in the game. So she's very sustaining for your party, help you live through a lot of big nukes and burst damage that way too. She's gonna be god tier. She's one of the characters, if you wanna play like a tanky playstyle, she's gonna be one of the go-tos that you wanna put in your party. Rosa here is also going to be someone you can target on the select banner for both PvE as well as PvP. She's going to be an amazingly strong DPS character, but like most games in PvP, and since this is factoring in PvP in a lot of ways, the supports and the debuffers and the anti-debuffers and the survival characters or whatever, they tend to sort of have longer longevity and also shape the game around them more so than a DPS, right? You can have 7 DPSs that work in this team composition, but only these 3 openers or these 3 debuffers or these 3 anti-debuffers that you want to use. And so because she is a DPS character, one of the best ones in the game for both PvE as well as PvP, I'm going to place her not in super crazy S tier. Actually, I'm going to drop her down here too. The anti-debuffers are just too strong. I'm gonna put her down in A tier. Messiah, same sort of thing. God tier DPS character. But is he one of the best in the game? 100%. Are there other characters that sort of shape the meta around him more? Yes, definitely. I'm gonna put you over here too, and you up here too. Comparatively so than some of the other ones here. We also have this girl, very strong. I'm going to talk about her and Sani at the same time. Sani is an SSR healer, incredibly powerful, especially early on. She doesn't even need to take an action to heal. She just needs to like take her turn. So even if you early on get hit by a bunch of debuffs, you don't know what's going on. She can be stunned, she can be frozen, she can be whatever. As long as she's getting her turn, she's going to be healing people off for passive constantly. She's just a really good character, and she also will help you up with your Tiamat. So she goes there. Very similar to Sani is going to be Valerian, who needs to actually take an action with her S3. She'll put a buff on herself, called Hazy Dream Bubble or something, and then she's just going to passively give shields to people in your party. And if they're about to die, her little Hazy Dream goes away, and she automatically heals them. Her S2 also has a 1-turn invincibility that also puts heal over time on allies. So very similar to Sonya, but unlike Sonya, you do want to, use skills on your turn with her instead of just passively existing and healing people. Not exactly the same, but she's pretty good. I don't know if I want to. I'll put her right there. We also have Tsukiyomi, who's going to be a god tier character as well. Also, someone that you can gain access to, very similar to something one as far as like what they're doing in your team, like Lily or Dokidoki. S3, 100% turn meter boost on a 127 combined speed stat character. She also turn meter pushes herself when she has 3s by 35%, and then gives your entire party attack as well as speed buff, all in one skill. Extremely powerful there. She also has an S2 that is AoE that scales off of her defense, and there's a nice piece of equipment that you can, or module, I forget what they're called, module mechanicus, that gives a large amount of defense at the start of your turn for a couple of turns. So this makes her very bulky, but it also allows her to do a bunch of damage with her S2. And she also has attached to it silence AoE for 1 turn on your enemies, and it reduces all skill cooldowns for your allies by 1 turn as well. So very strong skill 1, very strong skill 2. And then her S1 as well is defense scaling for damage, meaning that it's going to do a decent amount of damage, but also will CR push whoever is the highest attack in your party by 25% CR2. So she's got incredibly strong momentum, incredibly good damage for support, and incredibly nice momentum longevity with her S1. She's a fantastic character. Y'all were wondering, Marvel. Now, Marvel is very powerful, is very prominent. I think he probably deserves to be S or A. I think he actually will belong in A. Now, I know a lot of you are going to be, I watched all this stuff. Marvel's a character who is very good, but also is sort of preying on the non-longevity of this game right now when it comes to people's experience with PvP. Immunity sets, characters with immunity, being able to gear gap people. You're seeing, Marvel, who's got decently high base stats for speed, just sort of popping off. But as soon as people start putting immunity set on their characters, as soon as people have, faster Freya that can give everyone immunity. Marvel doesn't really have a strip on his S2, S3 when he wants to go right away. He wants to put, silence on everyone. He wants to CR pushback people. He wants to do all this controlling stuff. And right now, yeah, you can gear get people use 127, but some of the other more anti-Marvel characters are going to be better at going first, right? So they're going to be able to block that speed down. They're going to be able to block that resist down. They're going to be able to block a lot of that stuff. The silence on his S2. Right now, he's just kind of, when you see him pop off in clips, it's because no one's really sort of combating anti-debuff measurements. And if you go ahead and look at this tier list, well, a lot of the top tier characters are either fast debuffers or fast buffers or fast characters that enable your other characters. So yeah, you can get your Marvel to go before your enemies, anti-debuff characters, their tanks, their supports, their Lingluos and stuff. And with someone like Lily, or with someone like Dokidoki, or with someone like Freya, right? Any of these other characters up here can enable your Marvel to be even better. But just like when we talked about with the DPS characters, who deserves the higher tier? The character that looks flashy on screen, or the character who is allowing them to take their turn and allowing them to fit into that significant little spot that they need to fit into to take that turn precisely when they need to outspeed it, right? To do their thing. So I think Marvel is going to be an awesome character. He's still A tier is great, right? This is God S A B C D, and he's up here. He's a fantastic character. And honestly, as I'm sitting here looking at this list, there's only 2 S tier characters. I think we do this. I think we move all these 3 up 1. And so now when we look at what characters are top tier in Etheria Restart, we have God, which is going to be shaping the meta in a lot of ways. Either they're going to be a core facility for some of these gameplay, whether it's going first, or being an anti-debuffer, or being a debuffer, and they're the best of their class at that, or stripping. These characters are going to help facilitate in PvP, especially in PvP, the meta, and they'll be in some of the top strategies. Then you'll have the S tier characters, which are the follow-ups to those top tier strategies. And then we'll have the A tier over here. The A tier, these are solid characters. They stand out over some of the other ones because they do exceptionally great things in both PvE as well as PvP. And they're just going to be rated, a little bit lower than the people who enable the strategy or the pillars of that strategy, if you will. So these are going to be the best characters I think that you can gain access to in Etheria Restart for both combinations of PvE as well as PvP, at least from my experience and what I've seen so far from tournaments I've watched, etc. You want to see more stuff, make sure you leave it down below. All right. And I'm just gonna go to sleep now. It's late.